Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my devlog for the Majestic. I started off recording on a Friday. What I was working on, I'm in the second act of my game. Act 2, I started on very early on. I had most of the story elements fleshed out with voiceover and everything, but there was just a lot of tweaks that needed to happen. So I've gone through every single story beat and basically took the acts to a lot of them, trimmed them up, made them a little more streamlined. And in some cases, I enhanced them a little bit. So in this case here, I'm enhancing this story element by adding some more context to what's going on. Here is a creature invading the land, and a villager is in danger, and he's going to get swept up by this creature. And his wife witnesses the whole thing and becomes destitute over it. I have a particle effect trailing behind this creature, and I'm just trying to tune that up a little bit. One thing that's not obvious here is this is going to take place at nighttime. So I think it's going to look a little better when the time of day is correct. And then after that happens, I have it transition to a sequence here where a couple characters are on horseback riding toward the event. What I needed with these horses is some dust to fly up. I found a little dust effect that I already had. I made a copy of it, and I just need to tweak it up, make it linger a little longer, make it a little larger, because I think what I used was a dust effect for some footsteps, and I want this to be for like a galloping horse. So I go through and adjust a bunch of stuff. I'm adding the effect to the horses, and I think it turns out pretty good. It's pretty much what I envisioned. And throughout this process, I am editing the script as I'm thinking of things, of how I want to process this sequence. So what's going on in this one in particular is it's basically a complete rewrite with extra dialogue as well. So the previous voiceover I had recorded is mostly going to be discarded, and I will need to go back and have it all re-recorded. It just needs to flow a little bit better. So I'm editing my script document. I make sure it's up to date with what's in the game so that I can easily manage the voiceover and the localization, which will come at some point in the future as well. So after getting to a good stopping point with that for the day, I just like to kick back and do something a little more relaxing. And in this case, I was just placing meshes around the level. And the point of this is to cover up some of the harsh angles, the harsh cliffs from the landscape height map. I want to use some actual mesh geometry to fill in and make it look more detailed. And I don't have a perfect workflow at this point in time. And I did this in Act 1, and I think it really enhances the level. And then after I place all the meshes, I will eventually rerun my PCG volumes, which will place trees, grass, bushes, etc. on the meshes as well, just to get them to blend in a little better to the landscape. One of the big things is to line all my waterbeds with meshes. So I hid the stream, but right here, I'm working on the riverbanks, getting meshes in there. Working on the same story element, the story sequence, I am more focused on getting the dialogue plugged in, tweaking the creature, tweaking the camera. And when it comes to the dialogue, right now, since I do not have the voiceover recorded, I am just going to set it up to play subtitles. With the nighttime vibe, it's more bluish. And one thing I realized is my nighttimes were a little too bright. So eventually I tried toning that down as well. So this is still too bright. It's going to be quite a bit darker at night. And I'm adjusting the camera and just trying to get the whole feel for what's going on here. The whole idea with this sequence is supposed to be a little bit emotional. It's a more of like an action sequence. It involves a little bit of everything. The cinematics do take me a little bit of time. Each level has 10 of these, and the more characters, the more work. So this one, as you can see, has quite a few characters when you consider the beginning of it had the creature, the horses, and then all these people. So it's a lot to go over and tweak all those elements. So once I was done that, I wanted to add a little extra to the game feel, and this applies everywhere in the game. So when acquiring the main resource of the game, which is called Essence, I wanted there to be a little vignette effect around the screen signifying acquiring and losing Essence. First, I start in the material and set up the material graph to be a post-processed material. I followed a small tutorial online for this, and then I put a post-process volume on the character, apply the post-process material to that post-process volume, set up an event to trigger it, using a timeline to adjust the intensity of it, and changing the color to the color of Essence, which is like a blue. I also, when losing Essence, it's like a darker purplish color. So after a lot of testing, I think it looks pretty decent, and it's just an extra effect to make things feel a little better when acquiring the main resource of the game. So every once in a while, when I knock out a big portion of my to-do list, I will build the game and then play test it. Starting the game up from scratch and just playing the game and then logging all the issues. And eventually I did log quite a few issues, at least over 40 different things, whether big or small. And at this point in time of recording this devlog, a majority of those have now been addressed. One of the new things I added was when you acquire a color, when you discover a color. For example, right here, there's now a little widget that pops up. You've discovered this color, and you can discover many different colors for your character. I call them presents, and I thought this was a nice little type of objective that adds some customization and something to collect. And that was one of the big issues, was the saving and loading of the progress for these colors. Oh my goodness. Something so simple can sometimes take quite a bit of time to get right when it comes to all the little details. I had a bit of a time with transferring the data from one level to the next. For example, the player can save at any point in time in the game to save all their progress, but I also have to consider the fact they do not want to save their progress, but I still want to carry over their progress from one level to the next, just in case they eventually do want to save it. Maybe most games, they'll just save it automatically, but I like to give the player maybe some flexibility of not having their progress saved. So it did take some time, and I do think it's working properly now where they can acquire all these objectives and move on to the next level, and it'll all carry with them. So this is my playtest, and if you've played the demo, a lot of this will be familiar because most of this here is in the demo. Here are some things that are not in the demo, just some quick cinematics that I've shown before on my socials, but I'm currently in areas you cannot access in the demo. Here's a cinematic that's in the demo. Children here playing in the lake and by the river. The skipping stone scene, I was proud to get that in because if you've ever played my first game, The Companion, that scene there is a callback to a sequence in The Companion. So here is parts of the beginning of Act 2. Once upon a time, a year and a half ago, I did release Act 2 as an entire downloadable demo. Some people may have tried it out. There was a lot of performance issues. I don't think people played it very much. After my playtest, I exited to the main menu, and then I wanted to load back into the game, it started playing the intro for the level again, which that's no good. I set out to try to fix whatever that issue was because I've never had that happen before. I do not know if it's fixed, so I'll have to keep testing and see if I can reproduce how it happened. But I suspect it has something to do with transitioning from the first level to the second level. Again, another save issue, loading, transferring data issue from one level to the next. That has to be it, since I've never had this problem before. After my playtest, what I started working on was some UI elements. I have this little card at the main menu that lets you know the progress of your game. I tweaked it a little bit, adding some categories. I added a spot for the presents, the colors, and I was testing the colors and the save and everything working and showing on this card at the main menu. So here I'm going to the next level and saving the game and just seeing if it all works. Sometimes UI development is one of those things where I just do something small that doesn't take much thought or time. It was more of the design aspect of it and less the implementation and coding aspect, just to finish off my day. So then the next day, what I wanted to do was start implementing the back end for a new objective. It's sort of in the game, but also not. It's something I've created a while ago. I'm retooling how it is. And it's another callback to my first game where there were these trees in the world that you interact with. What I wanted to do here was set up all the back end stuff for a tree type objective. So first I find an icon to represent it, putting it into the card, getting the back-end implementation working so that when I set up the objective, I just hook it up and it should work properly. The Wisp ability, which is one of the older abilities in the game, does have some sort of glitch, and this is an issue that I discovered from the playtest. So I've been tweaking and doing things to this Wisp ability, and when you do one thing, it tends to break another thing. So as it travels, it creates a path from one point to the next, and then it follows that path. It just so happened that at the boundary of the streaming for the level, the path would end. So what happens is there's no ground underneath the path anymore, and path terminates, which was an unintended side effect of a different change I had made. I do not want the path to have to rely on the ground being there, but I did something where it was relying upon it. After some fiddling and testing and changing some things around, that is now fixed again, and the path will go all the way to the objective without terminating early. All in all, that was my week. What I'm trying to do is get a alpha version of the game ready by the end of this month so that in April I can have an alpha build ready for testing. So Patreon is a brand new thing that I just set up, and one of the perks is getting alpha access. And so if anybody does sign up, I will have to give you a key for the alpha because it'll be hosted on Steam. And you'll get access to a private channel where you can discuss the alpha and your suggestions. So a shout out to my first two followers on Patreon would be Marco and Micah. Thank you so much for following. Anybody watching this, to follow is free. Just head on over there, hit the follow button. It'll be much appreciated. I'll give you a shout out in the next devlog. I do hope to start recording more behind the scenes sessions again. So I do hope to have more frequent devlogs put out there. But another thing I am seeing on this channel in particular is that my most successful YouTube videos happen to be Unreal Engine tutorials. I do want to throw in another training video here shortly as well. So the next video on this channel is likely to be a tutorial. I do have quite a few things in mind, so I just need to get around to recording that. So that's my plan going forward here. There's a lot happening with very little time to do it all in, but that's the way of things. So hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care.